important topic, which is close to our hearts. Just for those of you who don't know ONA, we're a membership association for digital journalists. We're global. Our role is basically to find out what journalists need and to help them get it. We listen really closely, and then we try to turn things around very quickly in ways including training, scholarships. We're very interested in helping young journalists become terrific digital journalists, and also training the veteran journalists who are out there so that they can share their vast knowledge with digital natives. One of the key things that we've been working on this year, over the past year, has been the ethics surrounding media, social media, and UGC, social news gathering. We think this is enormously important because I think, as everyone knows, when there's a breaking news situation, when there's a crisis, when there's a catastrophe, that's essentially when you always see the sort of the machinery breaking down in social news. As wonderful as it is, there's also many problems, and I think that journalists are quite honest and candid now in putting their hands up to say that we need to address those. So one of our initiatives has been to put together a news ethics committee that has two parts to it. One is putting together a code of ethics that you can build yourself so that we give you guidance on ethics in this crazy world that we live in, and how to put together your principles and codes, which may be very different from someone else's, outside of a few basic things. So that's launching tomorrow here. Tom Kent from AP will be doing that at 5 o'clock, so I hope that you will all be here to offer your thoughts, because we're going to be crowdsourcing everything. There's 40 topics, excuse me, and we will be asking you your thoughts on what we've missed and what we can do better. So please feel free to add to that. The other piece of this is, and Fergus Bell from AP, who's on this panel, is working on UGC, the 5 biggest challenges to gathering social news and user-generated content. So this panel will be addressing that today. And I'm really happy to see who we have here. They're all excellent experts on this subject. So I will just go ahead and introduce them. First we have Fergus Bell, who I mentioned, who's social media editor of the AP. Steve Buttry, who's editor of Digital First Media. Marina Petrillo, editor-in-chief of Radio Popular. Barbara Sagazzi, journalist and author. And Claire Wardle from the Tao Center for Digital Journalism. Thanks for you being here, and I'll have you go at it.
Thank you, Jane. Thank you so much. Io faccio da unica, insieme a Barbara, diciamo, componente della parte italiana dell'associazione ONA come la chiamiamo qui, dei salutini italiano, e poi procederemo alla conversazione in inglese, per cui chi ha bisogno della traduzione sa che può usare le cuffiette, e come tradizione con Steve Buttry per prima cosa ringraziamo gli interpreti che traducono quello che diremo qui. Spero che sarà un panel molto vivace, vivace almeno quanto le nostre conversazioni fuori da questa stanza. Stavamo commentando pochi minuti fa che il lavoro del social media editor e delle testate grandi e piccole è forse più difficile per quelle grandi che per quelle più piccole. A sentire me, io sento però normalmente. Il volume? Perché noi qui sentiamo amplificato, quindi se loro non hanno... Pronto, pronto, pronto? Aspettiamo, comandano loro, quindi... Intanto vi chiedo una cosa, quanti di voi sono italiani nella stanza? These are the Italians, Fergus. Quanti americani? 1, 2. No, non è per questo, adesso vi spiego perché. Quanti inglesi? Wow, British. Spagnoli? Sudamericani? Sappiamo che ci sono dei colleghi argentini, brasiliani in questi giorni? Nessuno. Ho l'ok dei traduttori? Tu che sei il tramite con gli interpreti? We fine? Ok. Vi chiedevo questo perché soprattutto a Fergus volevo mostrare un po' la varietà delle nazionalità, perché è importante nella discussione che cerchiamo di fare oggi, perché non siamo qui per riparlare di cose di cui abbiamo già parlato, ma per sottoporre a un ulteriore ampliamento e approfondimento i 5 punti che questa iniziativa dell'Associazione Giornalisti Online Internazionale si è data nella sua ricerca su come trattare al meglio l'utilizzo del cosiddetto UGC, User Generated Content. E una delle cose che auspichiamo è che molti di voi, dal punto di vista della propria esperienza, possano contribuire, e credo che se vediamo l'altra slide che Fergus ha preparato, possiamo già vedere il link che potete annotarvi per contribuire con il vostro punto di vista, oltre che naturalmente nella discussione di oggi. Jane ci ha già presentato tutti, per cui se siete tutti d'accordo io darei la parola per primo a Fergus Bell. L'abbiamo fatto sedere in mezzo un po' perché è lui che sta coordinando questa iniziativa, oltre che avere un contatto molto forte con le user generated content per via della sua esperienza professionale. Ha raccontato più volte Fergus di aver cominciato a elaborare insieme ad altri la questione dell'etica di come utilizziamo i contenuti prodotti dagli utenti sui social per la produzione e la raccolta di notizie. Quando con la sua organizzazione giornalistica, quella per la quale lavora, che è l'Associated Press, si sono trovati a dover gestire l'enorme quantità di materiali che arrivavano sull'uragano Sandy. Fergus ha riunito i 5 punti più importanti diciamo i nuclei di ragionamento più importanti su quali dobbiamo confrontarci per utilizzare eticamente il contenuto generato dagli utenti, e partiamo da lì. Fergus.
Hi everyone. I'm going to do this in English, if that's all right.
Yeah.
So let me give you a little bit of background to this group, just in terms of where we are now. So this group was announced at the ONA conference last October. And since then, we have been signing people up who work with digital news gathering and user-generated content. This is different to a social media or social media editors group. It's for people who are specifically tackling the challenges of things like verification and the ethics surrounding user-generated content and dealing with citizen journalists. The group has got good representation from the industry so far. Today, we're extending the invitation to European journalists and journalists anywhere else in the world, and I would encourage you to sign up to this group if you deal with user-generated content and you have something that you'd like to add or you'd like to weigh in on the discussion. One reason that we wanted to get this group together, as Jane touched on, is that this is such a fast-moving technology and concept and way of working in the news industry that no one's had the chance to just sit back and go, what is this? What are we going to do with it? What are the ethical issues? There's no time for the organic growth that we've seen in previous decades of journalism. So we wanted to convene a group of people who could discuss the issues. And we've got, in the room we have competitors. It's incredibly important that this is not standardizing the way that we deal with UGC. It is just looking at the ethical issues surrounding it in a way that we can remain competitive. And if I'm allowed to just speak a little longer, I'll just mention the 5 points that we came across, which you should see on the screen in a moment. So these were 5 topics that the group decided were things that we needed to investigate further. We crowdsourced, I think there's about 60 people in the group so far, and we had a look at these issues. So first is the ethics surrounding verification and accuracy. Second is contributors' safety. Third is rights and legal issues. Fourth is social journalists' well-being. Fifth is workflow and resources. And I've just highlighted one of those ones, which is rights and legal issues. That was the most contentious one, or the one where there were so many differing opinions and so much that we thought we needed to explore. So that is the first one that we will be deep diving into as a group, and hopefully we can start the process of that and feed back to the group what we discussed today.
Sorry. Steve Buttrey has been working for a long time on the transformation of say, traditional newsrooms into digital newsrooms, and he's been incorporating social media and user-generated content in his everyday work since day one. What is your take on the legal and right and legal issue?
Sure, and I think it's important to note the distinction, but the overlap between legal and ethical things. There is content that you might have legal rights to that you still have ethical issues with. Whether it's verified and those sorts of things. And similarly, something that might be ethical might present some legal issues. Particularly an aspect of this that overlaps with UGC, but is probably stronger in the area of journalists working with sources is the surveillance kinds of issues. That if somebody is providing some UGC, and it gets into the safety issues, but there's the broader security issue that the panel on the Snowden effect addressed yesterday, that if there's somebody who's providing content and not aware of how this is subjecting them to surveillance or something like that, are we putting them at some sort of risk by republishing something that may have escaped notice on their Twitter account that no one follows, but if we find it and broadcast it to a broader a broader audience, are we putting them at risk, and those sorts of things. So it's a host of issues, and another issue with the legal situation is that legal issues change with jurisdictions, not only national jurisdictions, but state or provincial and regional jurisdictions within countries. Probably the biggest challenge here is how much we don't know what we don't know where legal issues are concerned. That if I'm practicing journalism in a particular state in the United States, something that might be perfectly legal where I am might be a problem in another jurisdiction that I'm not aware of. And if I'm using content from somebody else, am I placing them at a legal risk or even a more serious risk?
Sorry, I'll just add this to this thought from Steve, that most of the time when we're talking about user-generated content and the tools that users use to let us have content, we're talking about international platforms who do have their own regulations, which are the same internationally. But then, on a legal basis, constitutionally and on the ground of law, we're all different. And the NSA story actually showed that tragically, because we know that surveillance is using all the loopholes of the differences of regulation from country to country. But at the same time, we all live in the country of Facebook, and we all live in the country of Twitter, and we all live in the country of Google, who actually do have their own regulations. I would like to bring Barbara in for a moment. I was wondering, and we were wondering last night, and the discussion is ongoing, just remaining on the ground of legal issues, how aware are users, according to you, of the legal implication of what they do whenever they post a picture, whenever they blog something, whenever they tweet something in Italy.
Thank you. Well, actually, what I have to say, they're not very, well, I mean, from my experience in Italy, and I interviewed a lot of lawyers in Italy that are working with legal issues in this borderline, world that is the web and online content. And I realized, they told me that all the legal issues arise because users don't read the terms of service, and they don't understand closely and deeply. They are signing a real contract before, using Facebook or Twitter. They are actually signing a contract or agreed to some terms of service. They don't read them. They don't have any idea. They think they are tools. They are toys and not tools to share content. And I have to add, which is worse, that I worked closely with one of the major Italian newspapers to work with to write a social media policy for journalists. And while more than half of journalists told me we need it because we need the boundaries. We need to set the boundaries in which we can, write and do stuff because it's a new word for us. They are mainly print journalists, so they have no idea about, the boundaries and limits of it. The problem is in Italy, as far as I know, just La Stampa published their social media policies, while
guidelines,
yeah, while everybody could profit from an open discussions. Or other newspapers, other magazines and stuff, maybe they are closely working to their social media policies, but they don't share it. And it's a big issue in Italy, I guess, because we're really far behind this kind of discussions. And I think that everybody could profit from it, from an open discussion about, social media policy, what is good, what is not, what is, a good suggestion, what it's better to avoid, and stuff like that. Because the vast majority of journalists I talk to, and I'm teaching online journalism and social media to some print newsroom in Italy, they need it. They told me, we need rules. Please give us rules, because we don't know what to do.
And at the same time, we tend to forget that because the age of guardians is over, we are all users as well as journalists. Yeah. There's not just the big mass of users, but any user can become a journalist, and any journalist is a user at the same time. So I would like to know from Claire how much the TOE Center for Journalism is diving deep into the rights issue and legal issue, which is something we were saying earlier, we don't have even time to reflect upon, but it needs a lot of expertise as well.
Yeah. Good morning, everybody. The first thing I'm going to say, I don't know how to translate user-generated content into Italian.
Contenuto generato dagli utenti.
Okay, so it sounds better in Italian, but user-generated content is a horrible term, and nobody has come up with a better term. But my concern when we have conversations about UGC is that we focus on the C, we focus on the content, and we think about the content.
But it's you.
It's the you. It's the uploaders. And we had this conversation last night about its community. We often don't hear the word community when we talk about UGC. And when many people are uploading content, they're not necessarily sending it to a newsroom anymore. They're sending it to their friends. They're sharing it. They're not sending it, they're sharing it. And we as journalists are kind of going into their space. And so the ethical conversations about this are so important, because we need to really think about the users. And you're right, I don't check my terms of service when I sign my contracts. I go, oh, agree. But we need to explain to uploaders. So there's a huge issue here about educating people, both journalists, but also people themselves who are doing this. So I've been working for the last 8 months on a big research project about user-generated content. And as part of that research, I watched an awful lot of news, broadcast news. And as part of that, my research team, we found that only 16% of pieces of UGC have a credit added. And when we went to talk to newsrooms about this, there's a number of reasons for it, but UGC just gets seen as content. It's just vision. It's just like pictures from Reuters. So we're losing that connection that it's not actually just being sent by a freelancer. It's not something that you've got from the AP. It's sent by somebody who happened to be somewhere with a phone, shared it on Facebook, and journalists took it. And there is something very importantly different about that. So crediting is one, and legally, if we had a lawyer on the panel, we should be crediting. This isn't, oh, it'd be nice to credit. Legally, we should be giving attribution. But there's also a slight nuance here about labeling. So crediting is to say that photo was from Fergus Bell. Labeling is being transparent with the audience to say, this is amateur footage, or this was taken by somebody not related to the newsroom. And in 72% of the cases, there was no description to suggest that this was anything other than normal pictures filmed by a BBC camera or a CNN camera. So there are real issues here around attribution. And this isn't me wagging fingers. It was January 2009 that plane landed in the Hudson River. And I like to say that at that point, very few journalists understood how to find that on Twitter, whether they could use it, how to verify it, and should they credit. It's now, May 2014, and in a very short space of time, news gathering has changed fundamentally. And that's why this is such an incredible initiative to say journalists are asking for help. They want to know how to credit. And silly things like news management systems don't make it easy to credit. So if you're in a pressured breaking news situation, are you going to stop to the editor and say, don't worry, give me another 10 minutes, I've just got to make sure I put the credit on? It's not going to happen. We have to change the systems, help journalists make this easier, because we can't pretend that we don't know what we're doing anymore.
Fergus.
Yeah, I think that we need to move the conversation on in the industry about user-generated content and not see the users as someone that we need to be battling against. Not, are we going to get in legal trouble here? If we do this, can we get away with this? I think we need to get into a position where we're working with these people, because user-generated content is not going anywhere. It's increasing as more and more people get smartphones in more and more countries. They know that they can contribute to news stories, and they want to contribute to news stories. And we have to find a way to work with them in a way that gives them the respect that they deserve for capturing compelling content. So I would really like to see us steering away from this combative approach to the people that are producing stuff for us or that we are using, because I think that ultimately that's going to help us in the future. They don't have to share with us. Sooner or later, we're going to get to a point where, legally speaking, we will have to credit them and recognize them. And at that point, where they won't have to share with us if they don't want to. But we need to encourage them to do that. And I believe that's by treating them fairly. And that's why we wanted to talk about the ethics of that and make sure that we address the issues so that content continues to flow in the future.
Actually, I don't know if we can draw a difference between, say, citizen journalists or users, if we don't come up with a better word. I'll say people who are not professional journalists, who are contributing a piece of news or some tiny piece of a mosaic that we need. The difference between the user you have a relationship with or you don't. Because one of the things that really struck me about the ONA UGC initiative is the difference in the ethical problems that are raised when a big news institution is involved, as opposed to the social media editing that I do normally, which is build a team of trusted people I work with, where the relationship is very clear and very ethical, because there wouldn't be a relationship otherwise. And I think the breaking news situation brings two elements together. One is you don't have a relationship. It's just like, I think most press institutions behave with user-generated content as if they found a wallet on the ground with no name on it, which is bad. And I have to say, in Italy, we're starting to see examples of users who find their pictures not credited, used by national newspapers, and they ask for the proper credit publicly, and the public supports them. I've seen that happening a few times in the last few months. Maybe it wouldn't have happened. They don't. They don't. Well, this is interesting. They don't ask to be paid. They ask to be credited. This is, if you're going to use my picture, please at least credit me. Not pay me, credit me. And they actually won this battle because of the uproar that this happened on Twitter, and it happened, I think, with La Repubblica recently. But again, it's two different relationships, and I think in the second relationship, which is breaking news, a big mass of people and a big institution trying to find sifting through the wallets, trying to find what's useful for the breaking news without without looking much in the face, these people. There's no relationship, so there's less ethics, and at the same time, there's more hurry. Claire was mentioning, and I think it's in the workflow, one of the 5 points of the initiative. When you're in a hurry, sometimes you can't even ask your boss for more time for proper accreditation, or more time to just do a research and not publish the golden loo throne from Yanukovych Villa, which actually happened to the best of us. So I'd like to take it from there first.
Credit is the currency that we're all working with now, I think, when we're dealing with user-generated content. And I would argue against your point about, you're working in a small organization versus a large organization, because
No, actually, I'm talking about social media editing with I'm not working with hashtags. I'm not working with a big mass of people. I'm working with the same 1,000 citizen journalists that I work with from all over the world.
But my point is, if something happens in where those people are, and I'm going to want that content, the way that you have treated them is going to impact the way that I can deal with them.
Yeah,
because you have established the way that journalists work. So whatever, and that's why I think it's important that everyone needs to think about this, because social media breaks down global barriers, and that sounds a horribly cliched thing to say, but it's true. Breaking news now breaking news UGC content can be acquired from anywhere, dealing in a newsroom anywhere, and so you might not think that the way that you work with your community of citizen journalists will affect the way that I work with them, but I might need them one day. Yeah. And I don't want them being put off by the way that I'm sure you deal with them very well, but if you didn't, I wouldn't want them to be put off by a journalist who wasn't acting ethically, because they're just going to see journalists, they're not going to see different organizations.
Yeah. Steve, would you like to add on this? Yeah.
Well, and I think that works both ways. That if Marina's got a strong ethical relationship with them, and the external media that suddenly wants relationships with her community, and I like community as a term better than users, although again it's a cliche. That if the external journalist is not dealing ethically with them, that damages your relationship with them, because you're a journalist too, and they're thinking, oh, gee, I didn't know she worked that way. Well, she doesn't, but that relationship is damaged, and I think that that the credit question, we wouldn't think about using a journalist's contributions without credit.
Exactly.
But beyond the courtesy and the currency that credit is an issue of credibility as well. That if we're crediting this to a user, we have to tell what we know about that user and how he or she got that content. So that the credit issue goes into the verification and accuracy issue. These 5 issues are all very closely linked, and so that, to me, credit goes beyond courtesy to be part of the transparency of not only verifying but telling the community, how did we verify? How do we know that this is really a picture of what we're representing it to be? Well, okay, this person took the picture and we did some verification, and you can't explain the verification without providing the credit.
Right, yes, Claire.
And the other issue about user-generated content is it includes so much. There's a big difference between an activist in Syria, in Aleppo, filming something, uploading it to YouTube, and wanting as many people as possible to use it, versus my mum, who happens to be waiting for a bus and sees a crash and films it on her iPhone and sends it to me, versus maybe a staff member for the United Nations Refugee Agency who is on the border with Syria and has been given training to use their iPhone to show refugees crossing the border and uploads to Twitter. All of that we talk about as UGC. So Steve is absolutely right. It's a transparency issue to say, you know, my mum doesn't necessarily have an agenda. She's just filmed a car crash. The UNHCR worker has an agenda. It's a different agenda, but, you know, to their Syrian activist, but there's an agenda. So I think as part of journalism, we hide behind, oh, it's just UGC, but it's a source, and we need to talk about where that source comes from and why they are uploading that content.
And there are users who, because of that agenda, sometimes don't want credit. They want this to go out there as this neutral, factual thing when they have deliberately perhaps misrepresented something, and the credit, again, being part of the verification process, it's also part of the debunking process.
And what about anonymous sources? There's a lot of debate in the last 3 years about anonymous sources. Do you think we can reach some sort of universal ethical rule as far as this is concerned? People who are posting from situations of danger, people who are hiding their identities, whatever.
One of the issues that we identified was contributor safety, and I think that falls into that category. I think that most news organizations would have a policy on anonymity in stories, and I think my personal opinion is that UGC contributors, their anonymity should work with that policy. So people shouldn't, you know, there needs to be a very good reason why someone remains anonymous. If it's just they don't want to be known, you know, that is part of the verification. You need to know why someone doesn't want to be known, and there needs to be have a discussion about that. I do think that I do think that it's acceptable to give people a username credit, which is a way of it's identifying people in the medium that they've been discovered, but it does allow them to. If they've got a persona online, it does allow them that slight flexibility in giving details. Just like we don't necessarily make our own social network profiles open to everyone. That does protect them a little bit, and that's a consideration, I think.
I would add also, I like to distinguish, I don't like the term anonymous sources as it applies to most of our sources. I prefer to call them confidential sources. To me, an anonymous source is somebody whose identity I don't know.
Right.
Somebody who called me on the telephone. You know, I got good page one stories back in my print days from people who called me up and wouldn't give their names. But I didn't hang up the phone and start writing the story. That was the start of my process. And I never learned that person's name or even how they knew what they knew. But I was able to find out that what they knew was true and report that based on actual sources. To me, that's different from a source I know, and I know her motivation for not revealing her name to the public. But I know that person well and know her reliability and discuss with my editors her motivation for not going public. To me, that's much different from, that's not anonymous, even though I'm not sharing the name with the public. And we've got the same situation in UGC, where sometimes we might identify somebody by username and we know who that person is. We've had some contact.
But we don't divulge it.
We've verified, but we don't divulge it for the same reasons. And sometimes we can't find out who that is, but we've either verified it or we've decided it's important enough to republish saying what we don't know, which we sometimes do. But I think that that our not identifying somebody doesn't make, you know, sometimes undercuts our own credibility. It's like, we don't know who this is, but here's what they said. and sometimes we know very well who they are and should. So I think sometimes we undercut our own credibility by exaggerating the level of protection that we're giving here.
I was wondering, maybe Barbara can add into this. Besides the guidelines and the ethical grounds that journalists give themselves or try to give themselves, don't you think that an ethical and transparent approach can also be of example to users, in terms of users are still looking up at press institutions as far as behavior is concerned in terms of content and the use of content. So wouldn't a clear ethical behavior from the main press institutions, from small to big, be educational for users? Because I believe that users must be empowered to know even how to use the tools of verification in the first place before submitting a piece of content to the web, whatever.
Yeah, that's for sure. And people, as you said, are still looking up to big news corporation and institution to know how to behave on social media and on the web. And that's why there are a lot of discussions when a big news corporation or a big newspaper doesn't credit UGC content. That's the problem. That's why I told about please publish all your social media policies and try to open a debate also for users, to benefit users as well. But I also think that all the verification and accuracy stuff implies also an afterthought on speed. I mean, I guess that maybe the first wave of social media journalism, I'm talking about Italy, of course, so that's why I'm talking about first wave, because, I mean, we're really far behind on some stuff, implies a lot of speed and fastness in, using the tools. Maybe we have to, think about it, I mean, talking about journalists, and try to slow a little bit in the usage of these tools and reflect, don't rush to be wrong. So as we can also, be an example for users in order to reflect and restrain from, sharing content we are not sure about it.
Claire, empowerment of users.
Yes, I mean, there's, I think, let me start again. When you see a lot of rumour circulating around breaking news, it's often because people are tweeting without checking, but actually all the tools that social media editors and verification teams use are free tools that anybody could use. And actually, I think because newsrooms aren't particularly transparent about the way that they verify and what they know and what they don't know, the users themselves don't know these tools. So simple Google reverse image checks or, even those sorts of simple things would change a lot of that. And I mean, certainly all these tools, it's a media literacy point for me. So I think it's about education around the users themselves knowing what to do. And if you talk to social media editors who talk about hoaxes, it's very rare that you have a deliberate hoax. Mostly it's the audience trying to help you. And they will see a picture of an upturned van from a tornado situation and say, oh, have you seen this? And, it's from 3 years ago, and they don't know how to check, which they could do very easily before they send to a newsroom. So, I think Fergus makes a really important point that this shouldn't be a battle. It should be collaborative. It should be about community. And so if we have this attitude that we're working with the audience to tell better stories, to create better content, then the audience wants to help. Anybody who works with community says the minute you have a very well-worded call to action, the audience will come back with incredible content. And actually, if we really embedded those processes, we would just have a better end product. But I think that's absolutely about how we talk to the audience, but also share with them and say, did you know how to do this? This is a new tool. Did you know that this has just changed on Twitter? You can do this too. And I think that would just change the dialogue that we have with our audiences and our communities.
And also, I also know we don't have much time, and Fergus wanted to gather some opinions from the room, so you can juggle it yourself.
Okay, I just also wanted to make one point to add on to what Claire said there, and that's that all of our audiences have access to social media as well, and they are seeing a lot of the same information that we're seeing. So, as Steve also touched on, we need to be transparent about the way that we're verifying, because they can verify to some extent themselves, and they need to, in order to maintain their trust in us, they need to see that we are looking at the same things that they are. So some of the things that the group are tackling are kind of the way that we. And again, not to standardize the way that we do it, but to help an audience understand what the industry mean by certain things that we're doing. Verification is one of those. I mean, what does verification mean to an audience? What does it mean if does it mean something different if it's presented by different news organizations? So I wanted to just see if there were any opinions on verification, but I mainly wanted to ask about the ethical issues. What does the room think are the main barriers to acting ethically when we're talking about user-generated content? Because I think it would be fascinating to see the different challenges that you are facing, and how, if I suspect that we may have tackled some of them, and we can talk about them. Is there a microphone? Does anyone have any points? Someone does have a.
Fergus ci ricordava appunto che la ricerca di questa iniziativa dell'ONA sull'etica di come trattare il contenuto generato dagli utenti non è tanto di trovare uno standard che vada bene, universale, che vada bene per tutti, quanto piuttosto quello di esplorare e conoscere, confrontandosi, tutte le sfide etiche che ci pone questo nuovo utilizzo del contenuto proposto dagli utenti. Quindi dice che forse il modo giusto, no, per confrontarsi è provare a fare degli esempi su quali sono gli ostacoli a un comportamento etico, la casistica che ci può capitare in cui non sappiamo se riusciamo o no ad applicare il comportamento etico che ci siamo prefissati. Però in generale oggi siamo qui anche per raccogliere appunto i vostri suggerimenti, contributi e interrogativi. Come avete visto anche noi abbiamo più domande che risposte, però siccome è un'esperienza che stiamo facendo in breve tempo tutti insieme in un modo molto denso, sicuramente anche oggi possiamo tirare fuori qualcosa. Quindi se qualcuno ha domande o racconti anche di esperienze, c'è un radiomicrofono che possiamo far girare. Ciao.
Funziona? Ok. Volevo fare una domanda su un'altra sfida etica molto simile comunque a quello di cui avete parlato, portando un esempio. Un paio di anni fa c'è stata un attentato a Brindisi, se vi ricordate, una studentessa è morta. Un noto quotidiano online italiano ha subito cercato il suo profilo Facebook, caricando tutte le foto, pubblicando tutti i commenti ricevuti dalla ragazza, pubblicando subito dopo un'altra cosa ancora più grave, la foto di un'altra ragazza pensando che fosse morta, mentre in realtà era viva e stava bene. Cosa ne pensate di questo tema? Quanto sia corretto? Questo.
Typical case.
Yeah, so as part of the research, we talked to 64 different journalists around the world, and ethical challenges around Facebook was the number one problem. And of course, the reason that this is so problematic is because technically something might be open and public, but I think we all know, if we use Facebook, that sometimes we just don't know about our own privacy settings. And so in every newsroom, when people say you can't actually have guidelines about Facebook ethics because you need to use your own judgment. So for example, one newsroom would say, if we can access the Facebook page of somebody who has committed a crime, we are much more likely to use content from that page than somebody who's the victim of a crime. So many places would say journalists have always had ethical discussions around very difficult journalism subjects. Facebook is just another one of those discussion points. But I think for example, in the BBC ethical guidelines, they say, what was the intended use of the person who on Facebook what did they think they wanted? So some people will have very open Facebook pages and they're using it in a way that they have lots of public posts. Other people, you can see from their Facebook page that lots of it is private, but might not have understood that their photos were still public. So in that situation, they would say that person probably didn't want those photos to be shown after they died. But Facebook is so complex because of this, the public-private divide. I think it comes back to people's individual journalism instincts. And newsroom discussions.
I think we also need to think about the rights issues involved with taking things from Facebook. I mean, just because someone has found themselves with a newsworthy photo doesn't necessarily mean that we get to use it for free, just like people can't take stuff from our archives that we've run previously if there's a news event that's relevant. To get into the nitty-gritty detail, unless it's a selfie, unless someone has a selfie as a profile photo, they didn't take the photo, and therefore they don't own the rights to the photo necessarily. So I know that at the AP, it's particularly difficult when you have a shot on a Facebook page when it's a wedding photo, because the rights are retained by the wedding photographer. And I think as people become more and more aware about content ownership and the rights of their content, taking off social networks is going to, even if you're skirting around the ethics of taking from someone's page, the actual kind of ownership issue is going to become bigger. While you're thinking about verification challenges or challenges to working ethically, I wanted to perhaps raise the issue about the safety of contributors again. And in the room, who asks for user contributions via social media? Who has done that? Okay, a couple of people. I don't necessarily want to ask a question, but I would wonder, who in the room knows the legal implications and the duty of care that you owe the person if they get injured, taking a photo or a video? Okay, Joe knows. Joe from Twitter knows, so that's good. But I think that this is something that is an interesting debate. I don't think that the answers. I don't think anyone knows the answers yet. But the issue of soliciting content, asking people to create something for you, or discovering something that people have already created. I don't know if
No, Caroline Bannock is here from The Guardian Witness, and as that project, they are working with many people who are sending content. But even the language choices, the difference between asking people to send you their pictures versus sharing their pictures with you, is a really important distinction. And yes, maybe this is legally protecting yourself, but it's also the ethics of understanding that if, and the BBC has really interesting kind of training courses around this, which is if somebody witnesses a car crash on the motorway and they send you some pictures and you say, thanks very much, but actually we probably won't use them, they're a bit wobbly, and they say, oh, don't worry, I'm on a motorbike, I can whiz down the side hard shoulder and get you better pictures. As a journalist, even though that's tempting, you have to say no. So in this world of social media, the fine line between actively commissioning versus using people's content is really blurry. And people with their smartphones have not gone through journalism training. They've not gone on hostile environments training. They find themselves at protests trying to get at the front to get a better picture because they know that a news organisation will want it. We're in really dubious territory. So, health and safety is crucial, obviously.
Marina, I just want to add, maybe to bring the attention on the point number 5, workflow and resources. We talked a little bit about it, but maybe sometimes it's also a matter of very small newsroom and big problem in workflow. They don't have really the time to check and to think about what they're sharing. I know it's not a good advice to give, but maybe we have also to think about point number 5 in this big discussion about verification and accuracy and sharing of content.
I'm interested to know what you mean by people don't have time.
No, I mean, at the point 5, bring the attention on workflow and resources of a small team. And I see the idea is to help a small team to have the time and, thought to reflect on what they're doing. I'm thinking about, Italian situation, very, very small newsroom. I know it's not a justification not to credit staff or to share UGC content that are not good enough to share. But I mean, it's also a point to think about it.
I think that the way that we approach it at the AP is that we have a scalable model for the workflow. And so the idea is that our verification process can work in the newsroom dealing with global stories, but it can also be used in a bureau, the smallest of bureaus.
A very small one, yeah.
And the idea is that basically you tap into the resources that you have available to you, and then you become more ambitious if you get more resources, or you can scale it up. I don't believe that time should ever be an issue, because if it's a small newsroom reporting on something that's very local, you are the person who is best positioned to be able to verify that.
Yeah.
And really, are you going to be comfortable reporting something that you haven't verified, even if for the sake of competition?
Yeah, totally. So the suggestion is, if you don't have the time, don't do it.
and as somebody who both started out in a very small newsroom and in my current position deal with a lot of small newsrooms, those small newsrooms don't have a different standard than a large newsroom for the accuracy of the content that a reporter is doing, or that a photojournalist is supposed to verify and get the names right of the people in the pictures and those sorts of, they have the exact same standards as a large newsroom in terms of accuracy. And so I think but every journalist who makes a mistake, whether it's an honesty mistake like fabrication or plagiarism, or I think most accuracy errors are honest errors of somebody didn't have a high enough standard, or they got rushed. Time is the excuse that we use, but we know deep down I didn't do my job on that one. And it applies to UGC just as it does to all of the other facts that we gather.
I don't know how many of you will agree with me, but I often have the feeling that time is intimately connected now in the way we use our social media content to quantity. Basically, time has been shrinking for us because there's an open tap of opportunities to grab wallets from the ground, to use that earlier metaphor. But I'm wondering if one of the good practices that social media content, user-generated content can teach us is to have a more horizontal relationship with the news. We've been mentioning often in the last few years that breaking news are dead. Basically, what really counts at the end of the day is how thorough, how honest, how clean, how professional, how strong you've been in treating a piece of news, and not just how quick and grabbing, sort of wallet grabbing you've been in taking the news. I'm thinking of Boston Globe. ONA has been given a prize last year to Boston Globe for the Boston Marathon bombings. And I've seen the damage that the hurry has done on that day, and how slow the pace they gave themselves was, because they were in their waters, they knew the city, and there were a lot of mistakes all around it. But honestly, that hurry didn't exist when we hadn't that much quantity of information seemingly offered to us, which is not true. It looks like it's offered to us, but it still needs the same process: verification and assimilation and context. What do you think?
I think that we need to appreciate that social media is a platform, just like equal to our competitors in some cases. Our audience can find this stuff on the social networks. So if we are going to access it then we don't need to worry about being quick. We just need to be concerned about what additional context we can give to that. So the people who are turning on the TV or listening to the radio or reading the newspaper or going online, if they are looking at content that we have picked up from users, that we are giving something extra that they can't find on the social networks. And that's where we set ourselves apart, and that's where we can take a breath, because that image is out there, but people want to understand what it means. And I think that might be a way of looking at the time issue.
Contatto molto forte con le user generated content per via della sua esperienza professionale. Ha raccontato più volte Fergus di aver cominciato a elaborare insieme ad altri la questione dell'etica di come utilizziamo i contenuti prodotti dagli utenti sui social per la produzione e la raccolta di notizie, quando con la sua organizzazione giornalistica, quella per la quale lavora, che è l'Associated Press, si sono trovati a dover gestire l'enorme quantità di materiali che arrivavano sull'uragano Sandy. Fergus ha riunito i 5 punti più importanti, diciamo i nuclei di ragionamento più importanti su quali dobbiamo confrontarci per utilizzare eticamente il contenuto generato dagli utenti, e partiamo da lì. Fergus.
Hi everyone. I'm going to do this in English, if that's all right.
Yeah.
So let me give you a little bit of background to this group, just in terms of where we are now. So this group was announced at the ONA conference last October. And since then, we have been signing people up who work with digital news gathering and user-generated content. This is different to a social media or social media editors group. It's for people who are specifically tackling the challenges of things like verification and the ethics surrounding user-generated content and dealing with citizen journalism.
Important topic, which is close to our hearts. Just for those of you who don't know ONA, we're a membership association for digital journalists. We're global. Our role is basically to find out what journalists need and to help them get it. We listen really closely, and then we try to turn things around very quickly in ways including training, scholarships. We're very interested in helping young journalists become terrific digital journalists, and also training the veteran journalists who are out there so that they can share their vast knowledge with digital natives. One of the key things that we've been working on this year, over the past year, has been the ethics surrounding media, social media, and news, UGC, social news gathering. We think this is enormously important because I think, as everyone knows, when there's a breaking news situation, when there's a crisis, when there's a catastrophe, that's essentially when you always see the sort of the machinery breaking down in social news. As wonderful as it is, there's also many problems, and I think that journalists are quite honest and candid now in putting their hands up to say that we need to address those. So one of our initiatives has been to put together a news ethics committee that has 2 parts to it. One is putting together a code of ethics that you can build yourself, so that we give you guidance on ethics in this crazy world that we live in, and how to put together your principles and codes, which may be very different from someone else's, outside of a few basic things. So that's launching tomorrow here. Tom Kent from AP will be doing that at 5 o'clock, so I hope that you will all be here to offer your thoughts, because we're going to be crowdsourcing everything. There's 40 topics, excuse me, and we will be asking you your thoughts on what we've missed and what we can do better. So please feel free to add to that. The other piece of this is, and Fergus Bell from AP, who's on this panel, is working on UGC, the 5 biggest challenges to gathering social news. and user-generated content. So this panel will be addressing that today. And I'm really happy to see who we have here. They're all excellent experts on this subject. So I will just go ahead and introduce them. First we have Fergus Bell, who I mentioned, who's social media editor of the AP. Steve Buttry, who's editor of Digital First Media. Marina Petrillo, editor-in-chief of Radio Popular. Barbara Sagazzi, journalist and author. And Claire Wardle from the Tao Center for Digital Journalism. Thanks for you being here, and I'll have you go at it.
Thank you, Jane. Thank you so much. Io faccio da unica, insieme a Barbara, diciamo, componente della parte italiana dell'associazione ONA come la chiamiamo qui, dei salutini italiano, e poi procederemo alla conversazione in inglese, per cui chi ha bisogno della traduzione sa che può usare le cuffiette, e come tradizione con Steve Buttery, per prima cosa ringraziamo gli interpreti che traducono quello che diremo qui. Spero che sarà un panel molto vivace, vivace almeno quanto le nostre conversazioni fuori da questa stanza. Stavamo commentando pochi minuti fa che il lavoro del social media editor e delle testate grandi e piccole è forse più difficile per quelle grandi che per quelle più piccole. A sentire me, io sento però normalmente. Il volume? Perché noi qui sentiamo amplificato, quindi se loro non hanno... Pronto, pronto, pronto? Aspettiamo, comandano loro, quindi. Intanto vi chiedo una cosa, quanti di voi sono italiani nella stanza? These are the Italians, Fergus. Quanti americani? 1, 2. No, non è per questo, adesso vi spiego perché. Quanti inglesi? Oh, wow. British. Spagnoli? Sudamericani? Sappiamo che ci sono dei colleghi argentini e brasiliani in questi giorni? Nessuno. Ho l'ok dei traduttori? Tu che sei il tramite con gli interpreti? We fine? Ok. Vi chiedevo questo perché, soprattutto a Fergus, volevo mostrare un po' la varietà delle nazionalità, perché è importante nella discussione che cerchiamo di fare oggi, perché non siamo qui per riparlare di cose di cui abbiamo già parlato, ma per sottoporre a un ulteriore ampliamento e approfondimento i 5 punti che questa iniziativa dell'Associazione Giornalisti Online Internazionale si è data nella sua ricerca su come trattare al meglio l'utilizzo del cosiddetto UGC, User Generated Content. E una delle cose che auspichiamo è che molti di voi, dal punto di vista della propria esperienza, possano contribuire, e credo che se vediamo l'altra slide che Fergus ha preparato, possiamo già vedere il link che potete annotarvi per contribuire con il vostro punto di vista, oltre che naturalmente nella discussione di oggi. Jane ci ha già presentato tutti, per cui se siete tutti d'accordo io darei la parola per primo a Fergus Bell. L'abbiamo fatto sedere in mezzo un po' perché è lui che sta coordinando questa iniziativa, oltre che avere un